What's going on, YouTube family? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ty, and here we talk about fashion, fragrance, and a variety of lifestyle topics. So if that type of content interests you, consider subscribing. That way you're notified anytime I post a new video. Today, I'm back with another fragrance review from Parfums Vintage, and this one's called Amaranthine. It's inspired by a fragrance from the house of Mason Francis Kirkchan, one that's known but not talked about as much. So I'm very excited to share this one with you today. Let's get into it. So, talking about the brand for a quick second, Parfums Vintage is a fragrance house that does have their own original creations. However, they're most well known for their inspired by or their clone or dupe fragrances. In specific, Creed Aventus, they have multiple iterations of that fragrance, and the thought behind that is to solve the often talked about batch issues that are associated with Creed Aventus. So they offer alternatives that have more of the fruit notes, that are a bit more woody and have that birch note that's really pronounced, and then ones that are right in the middle and just very well balanced. So, what you're going to get with Parfums Vintage is a fragrance house where, yes, you are going to pay a little bit more, for the inspired by a clone fragrance. However, you're going to get that quality, and I think that's what I appreciate most. With Parfums Vintage, in my experience, and I have more than a handful of fragrances from them at this time, just really have that quality. So, with certain clone fragrances, you spray them on, they smell, cheap. You can smell the chemicals and just not, not very well blended, right? And at least, my experience with certain clones, but never the case with Parfums Vintage. They come off very high quality, very well refined, and just smooth from that initial spray kind of throughout the entirety of the fragrance. Okay, so let's jump into the presentation for Amaranthine, starting with the box. So we have a white box with gold letters and Parfums Vintage logo throughout. I'm not sure if the camera is picking that up. And then a rather interesting picture on the back. And for the bottle, this is their standard bottle for the 50 ml presentation, which we have here. So pretty nice, a wooden cap. Now let's check the atomizer. So nice atomizer, but let's talk a little bit about how this one smells. And as I mentioned, this one is actually inspired by MFK's Amyris Homme, the EDT version. And what you're going to get with this fragrance is a fresh and woody fragrance, one that features notes of amyris and iris. Then you have some mandarin and rosemary up top to get that aromatic touch. And as it dries down, you get some tonka just to add a touch of warmth and sweetness. So let's move into the official notes from Parfums Vintage website. And up top, again, we have that rosemary and Sicilian mandarin. As we move into the heart, we have amyris, coconut, coffee, iris, and milk chocolate. And then at the base, we have tonka and oud. But let's talk about how that actually smells. So in the opening of this one, you get that mandarin that is slightly sweet, juicy, it's fresh, and then you also have that rosemary. That is the perfect complement. It's refreshing, it's cool, it's clean. Just a really nice opening overall. As you work into the mid, you start to get some of that chocolate, which is a really nice touch. And then you also get sort of a milky vibe. So I wonder if it's that chocolate mixing with the coconut a bit, because beyond that, you don't get much coconut. I'm not a huge coconut fan, so that's something I'm appreciative of. But you sort of get that lactonic, sort of milky, creamy, smooth vibe. And of course, you get the amyris, which is really the star of the show. So to me, or to my nose, that amyris is really almost like a sandalwood, very smooth, very warm, and just, a touch of creaminess. So as that amyris and that smooth, soft wood starts to take center stage, you also get that iris, which to my nose isn't overly powdery, more of just a subtle, clean, fresh touch. And, it really makes it an amazing scent, in my opinion. And then finally, as you move into the base, you do get some of that tonka. Don't get much oud. The tonka definitely adds a touch of sweetness. Oud, I'd say this adds, another woody component, but definitely, more on the fresh side in terms of how ouds, can come off. So really from top to bottom, an amazing scent. One, again, that is, fresh, woody, but also has a little bit of sweetness, to it as well. And just overall, I'd say a very smooth scent. Okay, let's jump into price, performance, and versatility, and we'll start with price. So at the time of this recording, you can pick up Amaranthine from Parfums Vintage for $89, and that's for the 50 ml presentation, similar to what we have here. But they also have a 100 ml version where you'll spend $143. Now, compare that to MFK's Amyris Homme, which at the time of this recording, they have a 1.2 ounce, which currently retails for $145, or their 2.4 ounce that currently retails for $230. So we can't quite compare apples to apples just because of the difference in the two size variations within the brands. But, when looking at the 100 ml from Parfums Vintage, that is currently $143, and the 2.4 ounce from MFK, which currently retails for $230. Save about $100, but not only that, with the Parfums Vintage version, you're getting a 3.4 ounce bottle instead of a 2.4 ounce bottle with the MFK. So for that reason, I think, definitely is worth at least considering or checking out Parfums Vintage Amaranthine. And again, Parfums Vintage does a great job. You can definitely sample. And I would recommend that if you've, never gotten your nose on this scent at all in general, try before you buy. So pick up some samples from Parfums Vintage and, equally do the same from MFK just to help you make the best decision for yourself. Okay, so let's talk about performance. Get similar performance out of these two fragrances, both relatively good, especially considering the fresher fragrances. So with MFK's Amyris Homme, I get about 6 to 7 hours of longevity, whereas with Parfums Vintage Amaranthine, I get about 7 to 8 hours of longevity. So slightly better, but that is to be expected because the MFK is an EDT, whereas Parfums Vintage is an EDP. So slightly higher concentration, and definitely does last a bit longer. And in terms of projection, I'd say both are moderate. Get about an arm's length for the first couple hours, and then both become, a bit closer to skin once you hit maybe that 5.5 hour mark. In terms of versatility, this one is definitely year round, can work in any season. I'll say, the aromatic opening, with that mandarin and that rosemary definitely make it safe for warmer weather. But then also, the Amyris and its woody touch and the warmth that you get from the tonka also give it enough depth to work in cooler months as well. Me personally, I really love wearing this one in the transitional seasons, so spring and fall, as well as summer evenings. I think it works particularly well in those scenarios. And in terms of, casual versus dressed up, I think this one can be worn either way, right? So you can wear it casually, as you're out and about, but also can dress this one up, if you're heading out for a night on the town or going on a date or anything like that. So as we wrap up here, if you're looking for a new fresh fragrance that isn't your traditional blue or aquatic scent, but is fresh, woody, has a bit of sweetness to it, I would definitely consider checking out Amaranthine by Parfums Vintage. It's an amazing alternative to MFK's Amyris Homme, the EDT version, and it's one that's just really easy to wear. You can grab this, spray it on, and know that you're going to smell great, and it is definitely one that has given me positive reactions and compliments. And that wraps up today's video. So I want to take a moment to thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Do me a favor and leave a comment down below if you've ever tried Parfums Vintage Amaranthine or anything from Parfums Vintage, or if you've tried MFK's Amyris Homme. As always, I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Peace and love.